And good morning. It's day 22nd of December 2020. A warm welcome. This is New Day Kenya. I am Ayub Abdikadir Abdi. Yes, it's a Christmas or a festive period like no other because of the pandemic and the economic burden necessitated by the COVID-19 first recorded in the country in March 2020. And of course, what might hinder the race to normalcy following the doctors who down their tools, decrying what they say is the government's lack of ability or the lacking will from the government to address some of the grievances that they had raised. And of course, the consequences, which means therefore that the country might have a lengthened period in the fight against the pandemic as cases of COVID-19 continue to creep up, and local flare-ups that are likely to be experienced during the festive season as many Kenyans travel home to celebrate Christmas and the New Year 2021. We'll be taking the account of my panel later on set alongside, of course, the future of the capital city as Benson Mutura takes charge as the acting governor of the county of Nairobi. And General Badi, the Nairobi Metropolitan Services Director General, seems to be loving Mutura. In this case, of course, how delicious will Mutura be in the next 2 months as Nairobians will be heading for a by-election to elect a new governor who will take over from Governor Mike Sonko, who was impeached by the county assembly and that subsequently upheld by the Senate here in Nairobi County. Good morning, and a lot to discuss, of course, later, and that is in the aftermath of the stories and the newspaper publication analysis and the main stories making headlines across the country. Now, doctors have made good their threat yesterday and down their tools after what they say or term as months of cat-and-mouse games with the government. Speaking in the county of Kisii, the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union Acting Secretary General Dr. Chibanzi Mwachonda said they are prepared to go for a long haul with the strike until such a time the government will heed to their demands. KMPDU was in the county of Kisii for the burial of Dr. Stephen Mugusu, who succumbed to COVID-19 pandemic weeks ago. His death angered many Kenyans when it emerged, and many Kenyans established that at the time of his death, he had not been paid for months.
It is no to a suicide mission. We will not undertake a suicide mission.
The already struggling healthcare sector in the country now stares at full paralysis as doctors join nurses and clinical officers in downing their tools.
Doctors across this country today have decided they will not endanger their lives. This action is being taken because it is our lives. There's no amount of money that will bring back a lost doctor.
According to the Doctors' Union, the move has been long time coming after their pleas fell on deaf ears.
We gave 21 days. We extended for a further 14 days. So a total of 35 days. Decisions now have to be made on these matters.
And it will continue for as long as it takes until the government wakes up from slumber, until the government decides to do what is right by doctors, until this country decides to treat its citizens and its doctors as human beings.
Those of you who may have been on strike, to resume to avoid losing your jobs.
But what catalyzed the already tense matter was this comment by the health CS Mutai Kagwe, who threatened the striking doctors with a sack.
Do not be the one statistic again who will be a job seeker next year.
If we go down this path, we'll be swallowed in the miasma of propaganda and a lot of heightened emotion.
But according to political analyst Mark Bichachi, the highest office in the land is the last place the doctors should seek for redress.
So I keep wondering to myself, what exactly do they want the president to do? Because the president has no powers to push a county government to do anything that the governor is the executive of the county.
He says talks with the county governments is the only way out.
The number of healthcare workers that died this year in Spain and in Italy, in both countries, hits over 700 per country. So in Kenya, out of about 10,000 doctors, how many have died? The official number is 12, correct? So can we then safely say, compared to the statistics of other countries, that Kenya has done relatively well?
The doctors are demanding for better pay, medical insurance cover, and better protective equipment to help them combat the coronavirus pandemic, and they say they are not turning back.
Court orders will not stop this strike. Court orders will not make doctors stop from dying. Court orders will not stop infections or reduce infections amongst the doctors.
And as the decry continues, the Secretary General of the Kenya National Union of Nurses, Seth Panyako, said from Monday, this was in August, at the height of the pandemic, from Monday it will not be business as usual. You cannot work when you don't have food, when your children have nowhere to sleep, and you can't pay your rent. We, of course, will be discussing later with my panel. It is not only the residents of Nairobi who are feeling the effects or the brunt of the strike by the medical professionals. The pain of the strike is also being felt in the coastal region, where we caught up with Tom Joseph Wanyera, a father to a cancer patient, who narrates how doctors' strike is making the already bad situation worse.
Amid the rising coronavirus cases and the deadly toll the pandemic is taking on frontline health workers, Kenyan
iko na ugonjwa wa kansa, anagrow kansa kwa tumbo. Akuli, alafu tena hata maji anywi, wanampatia maji tu kwa mipira na dawa ya chakula pia kwa mipira. Lakini sasa madaktari sasa wamegoma siku 3 sasa. Wanasema madaktari wamegoma hawezi mpatia maji. Sasa kitu mbaya iko ndio nimeona leo nijaribu kutafuta mtu yote ambaye nje anaweza kuja akamsaidia kumweka ile maji kwa nimeenda kutafuta daktari ambaye anaweza kuja kumweka maji kwa mwili wake apate kutumia. Kwa shauri sahihi yuko chini kabisa, afya yake iko chini kabisa. Unaona. Na tena pia kula hajakula. Sasa hiyo mtoto ashaanza kuja chini. Afya yake ishaanza kushuka kabisa. Unaona. Na sasa hii uwezo sisi tangu niketi naye sijafanya kazi, siendi kazini. Sasa yote mimi nalala naye hapa, asubuhi nashinda hapa mpaka jioni, kazi siku hizi siendi. Na nilikuwa naomba kama wanaweza nikubalia wanipatie mtoto, nimpeleke mahali pengine ambao anaweza saidika. Kushinda sasa hii hapa hakuna uwezo, na pengine sasa ningesema nataka kumtoa watasema mpaka ulipe. Na mimi sasa sina uwezo. Kwa sababu mtoto iko na kansa. Na hiyo mpira, hiyo chakula mishipa kwa siku wanatuambia yauzwa 10,000. Si kuna 8,000, 9,000 wakituletea wanatuwekea kwa bili. Wanasema 8,000 au 9,000 wanatuwekea. Lakini ukipata kwa nje wanauza 8,000. Watu wengine wanauza 10,000. Na hiyo akiwekewa leo kesho imeisha, 24 hours imeisha. Yatakikana tena utoe tena pesa nyingine ununue tena hiyo mwekee.
And in the clearest indication yet that there is no insight to the doctors' strike across the country, the Council of Governors maintains that the industrial action by the medical professionals is illegal. The Council of Governors chairperson, who as well is the Kakamega County Governor Wycliffe Ambetsa Oparanya, says they will be forced to replace the striking healthcare professionals. His move, however, was watered down by a section of leaders across the political divide.
And if you see that now, nurses, doctors are taking the advantage and going to strike during this COVID time, I think this is not fair. It is quite unfair. Issues that have nothing to do with county governments. If there are issues to do with the national government, let the national government deal with it. So I think as a county we must also take stern action. If they have decided to go on strike, also let us also take stern action against them. But so far now, the strike has been declared illegal. So if you have a brother, sister, friend who will continue being on strike, obviously we shall remove them from the payroll. I've directed that we carry out recruitment.
Yule waziri wa afya pamoja na president pamoja na deputy president, hao wenyewe washughulikie hili jambo. Vile wakati moja tulikuwa na mtihani unakuja 1997 na tulikuwa tuko mgomo kama walimu, Rais Moi aliita kiongozi wa walimu Ambrose Adongo mwenyewe. Ukweli si ukweli? na akatatua ule mgomo, mtihani ukafanywa wale ambao walikuwepo 1997. Kwa hivyo Rais Uhuru Kenyatta waite viongozi wa madaktari na minister na wale ambao washikadau wengine leo hii asuluhishe mgomo wa madaktari na nasi.
Elsewhere, a section of Muslim leaders have waged on the doctors' strike in the country, asking President Uhuru Kenyatta to intervene and alleviate the pain and suffering faced by the medical professionals in the country. Led by Sheikh Jumangao, the leaders have called out this health CS Mutai Kagwe for failing to show leadership on the matter as the crisis deepen and the country continues to navigate the coronavirus waters.
Na tuwaomba serikali, Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta, muonye waziri wako Kagwe. Ametishia kwamba anataka kufuta madaktari. Madaktari wanakufa, hawana mishahara. Kilio cha madaktari ni cha haki. Tuomba serikali ikena madaktari wasuluhishe swala hili na wapatie mishahara yao, medical cover, kwa sababu maradhi ya corona yanaua madaktari wengi sana. Kuwafuta sisi hatuungi mkono jambo hilo. Tunakuomba Mheshimiwa Rais ingilia kati na Waziri Kagwe usitishe madaktari, kaa nao kwa meza, wape mishahara yao na marupurupu yao. NAMLEF na CIPK jana katika gazeti la Nation page 9 waliweka maoni yao ya kupinga BBI, na wakasema ni Muslims wanapinga BBI, ni mbaya, haifai. Tunarekebisha tu hayo maoni yao ya NAMLEF na CIPK, na tunaheshimu maoni yao, lakini si maoni ya Waislamu wa Kenya kama navyodai. Mimi Muislamu, huyu Muislamu, sote ni Waislamu, atupinge BBI. Kwa hivyo tunaiomba serikali artikoli hiyo wajue ni maoni ya grupu mbili. CIPK na NAMLEF ni wafuasi wao. Sisi hatuungi mkono maoni yao, sababu hatujaona ubaya wote sisi wa BBI.
And we get the daily updates of the COVID-19 pandemic, and as the health sector continues to experience paralysis, 114 more people have tested positive for COVID-19 yesterday. The new case is summing up the total caseload of Kenya to 94,614 cases. Meanwhile, the country is still on course in accessing the coronavirus vaccine come next year in 2021.
The country has 114 new cases of coronavirus today, bringing the total number of positive cases to 94,614. This was out of a sample size of 2,507 that was tested in 24 hours, bringing to cumulative tests done to 1,011,025. Of the new cases, Nairobi County leads with 68 cases, followed by Nyeri with 4 cases, Meru with 2 cases, Uasin Gishu with 1, Mombasa with 4, Kiambu with 6, and Busia County with 4 cases. Bungoma, Meru, and Kisumu counties each have 2 cases, with Garissa, Kisii, Nakuru, Marsabit, Uasin Gishu, Kilifi, Nyandarua, Murang'a, Kericho, Vihiga, Taita Taveta, Isiolo, and Embu counties with 1 case each. Out of the new cases, 100 are Kenyans, while 14 are foreigners. Unfortunately, 5 more patients have succumbed to the disease, bringing the total number of fatalities to 1,644. Some 325 patients have been discharged after they fully recovered from the disease. Out of this number, 256 were discharged from the home-based care program, while 69 from various hospitals across the country. This now brings the total number of recoveries to 76,060 since the first case was reported in March. Wangoi Kamweru, Ibru TV.
And we now focus on the crisis in the county of Nairobi. Acting Governor Benson Mutura has signed the governor's warrant that gives the National Treasury green light to release funding to the county shortly after he was sworn in yesterday. In the budget, the Nairobi Metropolitan Services Director General Mohamed Badi was allocated 27.1 billion, City Hall 8.4 billion, and the County Assembly 2 billion Kenya shillings.
Former Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko had refused to sign the warrant leading to a stalemate of operation in the county since October. Sonko on numerous occasions termed the Nairobi Metropolitan Service an illegal entity.
I, Benson Mutura Kangara, do swear that I shall always truly, diligently serve the people and the Republic of
And shortly after being sworn in as the acting governor of Nairobi, Nairobi Speaker Benson Mutura has signed the governor's warrant that gives the Treasury green light to release the money to the county. The governor's warrant is a document that authorizes withdrawal of funds from the county revenue funds.
I know that I'll be in this office on borrowed time, and just to appreciate and to have a written speech so that the media may not misquote me in their reporting.
The warrant also gives the green light for the implementation of the Nairobi City County budget for the financial year 2020-2021 of 37.5 billion, this being uploaded in the FMIS. In the budget, Nairobi Metropolitan Service was allocated 27.1 billion, City Hall 8.4 billion, and the Assembly 2 billion.
We are the first county in Kenya to invoke this provision of the Constitution. It therefore feels unique but necessary. Ladies and gentlemen, a few moments ago, I raised my right hand, humbled in spirit, with hopefulness in my heart, to take the oath of office of the governor of the great county of Nairobi, albeit in an acting capacity.
Both the executive and the assembly had been surviving on vote of account since June, which amounts to 8.5 billion, that's 25% of the annual budget.
That I proceed to act in the position of governor of Nairobi City is a testament enough that things are not working well and we must fix them. Ladies and gentlemen, we are aware of the events leading to today. The proceeding of the County Assembly and the Senate brought to the fore the underlying governance challenges affecting this great county.
The Solicitor General Kenny Ogeto, NMS Major General Mohamed Badi, Nairobi MPs led by Makadara Member of Parliament George Aladwa were all present in the event. The acting governor pledged to bring unity and restore sanity in Nairobi. This even as the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission IEBC is required to organize a by-election within 60 days.
The committee was gazetted on Friday.
And we are going to be discussing that after the break here on the broadcast. Meanwhile, the ODM party section Edwin Sifuna yesterday recorded a statement at the National Cohesion and Integration Commission NCIC over utterances towards Malindi Member of Parliament Aisha Jumwa. The SG who appeared before the commission yesterday morning was offered to do 50 hours of community service over the hateful utterances he made during the campaign trails in the preparations for the Msambweni parliamentary by-elections in the county of Kwale. The ODM party candidate had lost to independent candidate Faisal Bada in the by-elections that were organized by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission following the demise of the late Member of Parliament Suleiman Dori.
As you are aware, I was summoned to appear before the NCIC this morning regarding some remarks that I made in Msambweni in the heat of the campaigns. We have had a very candid discussion with the investigators at the Commission, and from the onset we have pointed out that we feel there is a bit of hypocrisy in the conversation surrounding the hygiene in politics. That in fact some of our competitors have made a habit of throwing very dirty words at our leadership, as you are aware, but they seem to operate under a different regime of law. But that immediately there is pushback from any one of us, especially in ODM, then it becomes a national outrage. And I'm not saying that it is all the leaders, even in our opponent's camp. It is a habit that has been developed by just one person. You are aware that she has in the past thrown very dirty words at our party leader, Honorable Raila Odinga. She has in the past also attacked Honorable Francis Atwoli in very graphic words. There was a particular incident involving myself when she snatched a microphone from me at a public event. And what is frustrating is that of all those incidents, nothing has ever been done in terms of trying to hold her to account. Even the latest action was precipitated primarily by utterances that she had directed at the ODM party, that somehow we were planning to visit sexual violence on her. And as the leader of this party, I had to set the record straight that we had no such plans or no such intentions. Having said that, I also understand that there are people who have higher expectations from us, people who hold us to a higher, a higher moral bar.
And on the same matter, the Malindi Member of Parliament, Aisha Juma, will be appearing before the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC, this morning. The light at the end of the tunnel seems to be slow but surely approaching first for investors in the country and players in the entertainment sector or industry as multiple avenues open for alternative income. Here in this report by Kaunga Chule, who yesterday attended a presser and explains why this is important at a time when the country is racing back to normalcy in the resuscitation of the economy battered by the pandemic.
It has been a tough yet necessary year for most entertainers in Kenya in the wake of stringent yet necessary COVID-19 measures that have been up for most of the year. From intermittent lockdowns that have made it almost impossible to organize concerts and events, to social distancing rules that meant that even if events were possible, very negligible income would be generated as numbers would have to be controlled. But if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And that is just what one of the leading entertainment companies in the region has done. Homeboys Entertainment, a company that was formed in 1992 as a small DJ agency catering for weddings and house parties, has today gone public.
Listing for small and medium-sized enterprises that is done through either the Booker program or the growth enterprise market segment, which is what the Homeboys Group have done.
Speaking at an event where the company was listed in the Nairobi Stock Exchange, Mr. Mike Roba, the company CEO, said the move would serve as a pace-setter for other entertainment houses in the country.
First of all, the motivation has never been about fundraising. It was just a way to make sure our business was aligned and set up for with the corporate structure, actually. Having come and started in the Juakali sector or in informal sector, we didn't have a lot of structures in place. So I felt that if we decide to list, you're forced to abide by certain rules and codes of conduct, which I think is what a business like ours requires or needs. Having grown so fast in the number of years we have, being able to now have those structures in place is what, for me, has been the success of this listing.
The company, which has also graduated from the NSC incubation program, will be listing 63.2 million of its shares at a per share price of Kenya shillings 4.66. It will join the growth enterprise market segment at the NSC by introduction.
Today we were listing 63.2 million shares of the Homeboys Entertainment Group, and this listing is significant because this is the first entertainment company that is being listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange.
Experts say the move will increase the company's uniqueness compared to its African peers, the Nigeria Stock Exchange and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, which have over 168 and 300 listed companies on their platforms respectively. The Nairobi share market has less than 65 listed companies.
And what we're happy about is that now they're willing to share part of their ownership with the public. I think this will be the beginning of seeing a lot of companies in this sector coming through. One thing that we want to say is that the NSC has a very rich platform for people to come and raise money and also to come and provide ownership of your company. So it has a significant impact on this particular market. And the other thing that we believe it's going to do, it's going to attract a new investor base, especially the youth, who are looking for companies that they can identify with. And that's why we're happy to have listed Homeboys today.
And on that note, we get a glimpse of the stories highlighted by the publications, the Daily Nation and the People Daily. On the front page, Charles, can I have that up? And it is a Christmas like no other, according to the main headline of the Daily Nation. And it is in regards to the low budget, with less money in their pocket and January school fees beckoning. Most Kenyans have settled for a short holiday season, a story highlighted on page 4 and page 5 of the Daily Nation. And the main picture is travelers at the Machakos Country Bus Terminal here in Nairobi waiting to board matatus yesterday. And the number of people leaving and entering the city for the Christmas and the New Year festivities have been on the rise. Matatu operators nonetheless have taken advantage of the situation to increase fares as the government calls for caution in not transferring or taking home the coronavirus pandemic and the virus. And on the left end of the paper, on the first page still, 15,000 promotion vacancies for senior teachers across the country. This is up to 15,226 teachers who have a reason to celebrate an early Christmas after the Teacher Service Commission announced promotion vacancies for deputy principals, senior lecturers, senior masters, curriculum support officers and head teachers alongside deputy head teachers who in this case will be laughing all the way to the bank. And Kenya is silent as countries ban flights from the United Kingdom of a new, more infectious strain of COVID-19 confirmed by authorities in the UK. And this was last week when Matt Hancock, the health sec of the United Kingdom, appeared before the House of Commons in London and expressed concerns. But the government, he said, is tackling the matter as many countries now ban flights from the UK, including in Europe and in other parts of the world. Saudi Arabia was the latest to ban all international flight, and not only for the festive period, but also what the authorities in the kingdom say is perhaps the more infectious strain of the coronavirus pandemic reported in the UK and also in the African continent in South Africa. A pandemic-battered economy, hundreds and thousands of civil servants are yet to receive their December salaries, and this amid rising inflation, which is stretching already depleted pockets as the Treasury does away with tax relief and sending mobile money for free, which of course will be piling more burden on the shoulders of Kenyans who have already experienced the brunt of the coronavirus pandemic. We'll be talking about this in some aspects to some length later on the broadcast. And the ODM party pushes for low-cost referendum or polls, if you may like. The elections, according to the proposals, have dismissed the electoral agency commissioners, was dropped from the BBI. The ODM party leader Odinga says 14 billion budget is outrageous and insists a referendum should not cost more than 2 billion Kenya shillings. And this, he says, should happen in 2021. But according to an opposition to that statement, Samson Cherargei, the Nandi County senator, who says Kenyans should focus on acceptance of election results and not the IEBC membership. The most feasible way of removing Mr. Chebukati and Commissioners Molu and Professor Gulie will be negotiated settlement, like the one handed to Isaac Hassan's team in 2016, and I'm sure you recall Machozi Mondays and Tear Gas Tuesdays. Benson Mutura is the acting governor for 60 days before a by-election that the IEBC will undertake. Senator Sakaja has called on the governor to stick to the deed of transfer and the provisions in regards to the county administration and the Nairobi Metropolitan Services. Director Generals Mohamed Badi of NMS and services at the County Government Assembly and the NMS had almost grounded to a halt following the standoff between Governor Mike Sonko and Mohamed Badi. And we'll be talking about this as per Article 187 of the Constitution, which does clearly stipulate how the deed should happen and what is the counter offer for the people of Nairobi County. On the cartoon edition of the Daily Nation, it's all about CS Mutahi Kagwe, and I will be talking to my panel on this. Health workers should get in and go back to work or I will fire them, he says. But the vehicle apparently seems to be not heading anywhere. It's jalopy, weather-beaten, it's tireless and might not embark on any journey, which in this case means, or is a depiction or interpretation of the standoff between the medical professionals and the government as they want some of the key issues that they have raised to be addressed. On the People Daily, top politicians given lifeline in new bill, and there's a fallback plan for governors who are serving their second terms, among them Wycliffe Ambetsa Paranyaka, Kamega, Mwangi wa Iria, Muranga, Ali Hassan Joho, Mombasa, Josephat Nanok, Turkana. And under the proposed law, which is part of the legislation to implement the BBI report, it empowers the president to appoint ministers from elected MPs and is seen as a route to government for governors serving their second and final terms. According to Jeremiah Kioni, who is the chairperson of the Constitution Implementation Oversight Committee of the National Assembly, he says by having unsuccessful presidential candidates in the running mates nominated to Parliament will help in tapping their vast experience and leadership and in any other field. Pain of patients in healthcare strike highlighted on page 6, and many Kenyans who yesterday had struggled and were frustrated in not getting healthcare professional or rather healthcare in many public institutions across the country. And wear mask or forget rallies, politicians won't. The measures have been developed by the Ministry of Health as part of the guidelines in public activities in the wake of the surging COVID-19 cases in the country. And this as per the Center for Multi-Party Democracy in consultation with the political parties, the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties and the Ministry of Health, who have developed a raft of measures to guide political activities in the country. And a picture of the DP William Ruto, who in a past political event. On the left end is a court that has reduced suspects' 30-year sentence to 10, and that happened in Gatundu in the county of Kiambu yesterday in the law court. And when we come back from the break, our highlight will be on a Christmas like no other, and of course not forgetting the crisis in the county of Nairobi. My panel is set and I'll be taking the account after the break here on the broadcast. 0791478990 is the number, the hashtag on Twitter. New Day KE, the short SMS code is 40920. When we come back from the break, that will be on and up here on the roundtable. Good morning, welcome back to the broadcast. 0791478990 is the number, the hashtag on Twitter. New Day KE, the short SMS code is 40920. Justus Otieno is political commentator and equally a lawyer. Thank you, Justus. Good morning. Your time is appreciated. On my immediate right is Nurdin Kagai. He is equally a lawyer and political commentator, governance analyst. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your time. And starting off with the ailing nation, in this case, of course, I'm talking about the doctors' strike. And coming to you first, Justus, what they are raising seems reasonable. They feel underprotected, overworked, underappreciated, and more worse, vulnerable to the infection as we are. But the government remains adamant. Where do you think will be the safe landing zone?
Ayub, thank you for having us this morning. The situation we are in is very unfortunate. You remember we had a show here and had clearly pointed out that it is not right for doctors to down their tools and let the ailing Kenyans die in the name of not being paid their allowances. And I said that allowances can be suspended for a particular point and time, but it will be paid. So it is the unfortunate situation that we are in, and I'm also asking myself as to whether the government really cares about the health of its people. Because it is not right that the doctors be on strike at this particular point in time with this serious pandemic, and then the government and through the CS for Health keeps on chest thumping and saying that he will sack the doctors and all that. So you ask yourself as to whether the sacking of these doctors will help in any case, because even those doctors that will be employed after sacking these ones will be asking for the same thing, and also to our doctors. I mean, it is good to be reasonable. It is good to be paid for work done. It is good to be given allowances. But again, think about the lives. Yeah? Think about the lives that will be lost. Like there was a lady who really cried after going to the hospital and could not get treatment for the daughter. And it is a very painful scenario looking at what Kenyans are going through. And given also the hard economic times, Kenyans cannot afford to go to these private hospitals. But so it calls upon our doctors to be a bit sympathetic to these poor Kenyans.
Just as what you point out is perhaps both ends, in this case, not willing to sacrifice.
Yes.
But you hear the doctors, for instance, Seth Panyako, the Secretary of the Kenya National Union of Nurses, who in August said from Monday it will not be business as usual.
Yes.
You cannot work where you don't have food. Your children have nowhere to live and you can't pay your rent.
Yes,
I sympathize. To be genuine, but Mutura Kagwe and the government appear to be issuing directives without that are not grounded fundamentally, in this case, have no base to stand on or not well anchored.
You see, again, what we don't know is what is happening behind the curtains. What we see is what they are able to put out here on social media that we are able to see. But behind the curtains, you would ask as to whether really a functioning government will not pay its doctors and nurses or medical officers. There is something that is not very clear to us, which I think should be unearthed. Because a working government cannot come out and say that we will sack doctors when they have not addressed the issues that the doctors are complaining about. So I think there is more than meets the eye that the public is not aware of.
And that includes the implementation and the honoring of the collective bargaining agreement of 2013,
yes,
which besides pay equally calls for better working conditions, hiring of more doctors, and the bettering of the services offered by 2,500 public institutions in the country. And we'll be talking about that.
What I don't again understand is this, whether it is the best time to push for the implementation of
not implementation per se, just part of course, what is in the details here, as the doctors decry, because what they have started on as part of the launch part was them to have perhaps better equipment in terms of fighting the pandemic. Others can be settled other times, and we'll continue. Nudin, coming to you. When you hear Mutahi Kagwe, of course, I will be talking about the public sector in general, doctors included, and of course, what many Kenyans decry as high-handedness when they go and seek services in public institutions, including healthcare. And but when you hear CS Mutahi Kagwe say that I urge the counties to fire the striking doctors, and in their place you can substitute the unemployed doctors, isn't this perhaps a cause of delay? And what impact do you think it will have on the race to normalcy and flattening the coronavirus curve?
First, thank you for having me. When you hear the CS say that, shows you the lack of leadership in this country. Threatening to fire the doctors doesn't solve the crisis. Threatening to fire the doctors, that doesn't bring PPEs to the doctors. It doesn't bring allowances to the doctors. Because who in his right mind will apply for a job where you know you're going to, it's more or less like suicide mission.
Just like your colleagues.
Exactly. So who will apply for that job? So you see there are issues, like my brother said, there are issues. And if you can check, going back to the time the Jubilee government came into power, the health ministry has had issues. That is why some brand it as mafia house and not as Afia house. So the problem is there are underlying problems that need to be solved. And that can only be solved by a proper leadership. And that is what ails the country, because we don't have leaders who are there to serve the people. So when there's a lot of bravado and chest thumping, there is no way we are going to go forward. So even if we check this issue with the doctors, the most important issue that we are forgetting is the corruption, because we have PPs at KEMSA. The KEMSA has not been dealt with, and so doctors are here saying we have PPs at KEMSA.
KEMSA warehouses.
The CS said they should be released to the doctors, and it's more or less like a roadside declaration, because it's never done. So we're asking ourselves, where are we headed? Because the leaders clearly don't know what ails the nation. So right now, if that is how you treat the doctors, it's more or less how you think about Kenyans when it comes to the pandemic. Because if the doctor that is meant to take care of you as a citizen is either dead or is not covered, what tells me that I'll be safe going to a public hospital? Today we saw a lady who was crying. Was it yesterday? Crying because she went to Pumwani, her daughter was about to deliver, but there's no doctor in sight. And the government will sit and say we'll employ new doctors. So we need, before you even think of not replacing, you should even be thinking of additional doctors. But now they'll tell you how they want to spend 1 million to take care of a Cuban doctor, which is funny.
And when you mention the Cuban doctors, because it's very important that we highlight that, and at the time when when the government representatives, in this case President Uhuru Kenyatta, and then Health CS Cecily Kariuki, flew or touched down in Havana, the Cuban capital, Chibanzi Mwachonda, who then was a member of KMPDU, at the time the SecGen was Dr. Ouma Oluga, and he said there is serious shortage of doctors in the country. The government should consider the 1,200 unemployed doctors in the country. We already had shortage, and we still are, and in the midst of the pandemic. Isn't this double tragedy for the country?
Well, you know, the workings of this government baffles me. Because you look at the way it does things, it's clearly a state of confusion. Because these are people who perhaps did not even believe that they could win an election. When they came to power, it was a surprise to themselves that, oh, we are here, we have arrived. And they did not know how to run things. I remember when Moi seconded Uhuru, he came from nowhere. He's just somebody who came from...
He was then a political protege.
Yes, somewhere.
To Kibaki.
We did not even know him properly. And even his state of health was not proper at that particular point in time. So when he came into power, it was like a surprise, you know. And this is the mistake that Kenyans make on the ballot. When they are persuaded and swayed by innuendos and make-believes of this world, and they elect people in power, those who have no idea about governance, those who have no idea of how to run state affairs. And this is now what has landed us to where we are. The way this government does things really baffles you. We have trained doctors in this country, trained by the curriculum that has been put in place by the same government in the schools that are government institutions. And then you leave them here, you go and import doctors from Cuba, and then you pay them highly, when these ones that you have trained with your own developed curriculum would have been paid at a lesser fee, and they would have been more efficient, and you would not incur such serious costs. So it begs the question as to whether really we as Kenyans are mature enough to pick leaders that have visions, rather than just picking every Tom, Dick, and Harry to run this public office.
You have mentioned leadership, and earlier on in your first statements, you remarked that there ought to be sacrifice, but you seem to be heaping blame on the government, I mean, in large aspect than the doctors. Therefore, do you think the will is there from the government because they have the money?
Well, you know, you look at, you treat each case with its own merit, yeah? Because when we look at the hue and cry of the ailing citizens, you request, or you would want to pray that doctors have sympathy on these common people. Despite the fact that, you know, we have a dysfunctional government to some extent, the government that really does not think on its feet, yeah? But you sympathize with the citizens on their state of health. But now, again, when you look at the government, the inefficiencies in the government, you also want to apportion blame on the government, because health should be one of the priorities of a functioning government. A government should not see its people dying and then chest thumping and then telling doctors that they will sack the doctors. That is not acceptable.
And that last happened in 1994 when more than 3,000 doctors were sacked by the Moi government in what was the longest strike that ended after 105 days. That's just 2 years after the multi-party democracy of 1991. Nurdin, coming to you.
Yes.
Then does it lay bare the need for up to, in terms of infrastructure and services they offer, perhaps setting up a well-infrastructured and architectured, engineered public healthcare system, which the pandemic apparently seems to be laying bare in terms of revealing the deeper skeleton? And do you think the current standoff between the doctors and the government is likely to delay that, even as we plan post the pandemic to better our healthcare systems?
Yes, I believe the standoff will obviously delay us achieving any proper healthcare systems, because first and foremost, let me play the devil's advocate here. You see, the doctors, via the union, they gave the government 35 days to have consultations and have a discussion. The other day, they were in Senate, and the committee told them, give us time, postpone this strike, and let us come back to you. That was done. So, in as much as we would want to blame the doctors, we also have to agree that the government has failed in its part. And that clearly comes out when the CS comes out and threatens the doctors. You see, in developing a proper health sector, you need the doctors to do so, because you need to have consultations, because they're in the sector. They would want to tell you what works, what doesn't work, and what needs to change. And for you to do that, you have to hire people who are competent. Now, you see, the current CS wouldn't know what the average doctor goes through. So if, for example, that ministry was headed by a doctor of integrity and of high competence, believe you me, he would have to know, or he would find a way to solve the situation and advise the president on the right path. Because at the end of the day, what we have there is a political appointee. So he's going to say what the government tells him to say. He's never going to offer any piece of advice to the appointing authority. So we need to change on how we do our things. In as much as, yes, we've seen this since dating back. the education and the health sector, there are always strikes. Why do we have each and every government that comes that never solves the issues? So we bring it back to the lack of proper leadership. And that can only be solved by the Kenyan voter waking up and voting people who will serve the country. Because the people we vote in are clowns. Or they get there and they're full of guesswork. Because they do, today they look, they wake up in the morning and say, that doesn't work, let's change this and go back to B. So we need to have people who are competent enough, of integrity, and most importantly, service delivered to the people should be of the urgency.
Okay, and do they have a point, Justice, when they say, perhaps, I'm talking about the medical professionals, before I come to the also decree expressed by the public, in this case, who is bearing the brunt of the standoff between the doctors and the government as regards the rollout of services that they ought to be getting, which is their right because they are taxpayers. Does it also perhaps reveal that there is more or less lack of appetite from the government? For instance, between 2015 and 17, we had 42 strikes by the doctors. And at some point in 2017, after 18-month case, KMPDU had filed, the Labour Court called on the registration implementation of the 2013 collective bargaining agreement, but the Minister of Health remained defiant. And 1 year later, there was the 5 billion scandal at the Ministry of Health. And the Minister of Health used millions of shillings as the largest donor to the Beyond Zero campaign, which is an initiative of the First Lady of the Republic of Kenya, Margaret Kenyatta. I mean, in this case, if they were channeled elsewhere to cater for the needs, for instance, of higher pay, promotions, better working conditions, then we would not be having the current stalemate, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a matter of misplaced priorities. And because we have political appointees in these professional positions, that is why we cannot get efficiency. When an incompetent person is appointed into that into a serious docket, such as that one of health, then it becomes a problem. They have misplaced priorities. Like channeling money to an initiative run by the First Lady. No, the political appointees are just trying to please those who put them into that authority. So that is why we have inefficiencies that we have in this country as we speak. Which should not happen. That is why I agree with my brother here that we need competent persons in these ministries. And even these people, after they've been appointed, if we must appoint them for political mileage, then we need to train them on the jobs. Yeah, we should have. I've always said, and I will always say that we should have the right people in the right jobs and in the right positions. In that manner, we will be able to solve some of these crises that we have in this country.
Okay, Nurdin, then it brings me to the point you have earlier mentioned, and which is very pertinent and is perhaps a mutating problem in the public service sector in the country. 30 million worth of medical equipment was returned to Swedish donors after the donor declined to pay 2 million Kenyan shillings in kickbacks for the consignment to be cleared in the port of Mombasa. I mean, the government needs to do more, isn't it? Because it seems that the doctor's call is more amplified than theirs, and they seem not to be standing on well-grounded, reasons for CS Kagwe to come out and say that the doctors will be sacked.
The corruption in the country is out of hand. This government has shown us corruption that they're even making Moi look like a saint, because the corruption that we have gone through, courtesy of Jubilee government, is crazy. You see, the other story we had was the donation from Jack Ma. Where did they go to? They disappeared into thin air, or they were stolen. Nobody told us where they went. The president gave out a notice, a deadline, so that we can have the issue on KEMSA solved. To date, that deadline ended a long time ago. So the problem is there's no goodwill from the executive to fight corruption, because there is no way donations will come and you ask for kickbacks, and we don't know who asked for the kickbacks. So you see, such a person should be in court, should be arraigned in court, should be charged, because you have now put the lives of Kenyans at danger. And that is more or less, like murder, because now you're saying here is a cure to ABCD or a protective measure to ABCD, but you say no, let them go and suffer unless I get my 2 million kickback. And that is the challenge we're having. So when you talk about leadership crisis in the country, it stems from that. And then you see nothing, there is no fundamental, or there is no seriousness from the government to change the corruption that we have in the country. So we end up, as citizens, we end up suffering because the government has no goodwill at all.
Okay, and just as, does it also, because I mentioned corruption on the end of the government and the inability to address that, not only in the port of Mombasa, and one that is not confined to the medical fraternity, but also that has an all-round effect, which is more or less universal in the public sector in the country. Also, on the part of the medical professionals, we see them abandon their workstations, especially in public facilities, Kenyatta National Hospital, Moi Teaching Referral Hospital, and the other referral hospitals across the country. Do they also need to tighten belt on their end as they come and want their grievances addressed?
I think they should also stop the side shows and media coverages that they are fond of. The KMPDU Secretary General should be a little bit serious with his work, rather than coming on cameras and trying also to threaten the government and all that. Him as a person at the helm of the championing for the rights of the doctors, he should sit down with the government, but by not, he should form a way or channel in which he sits down with the government, rather than coming to the social media and telling us the things that how they are going to strike and all that, how they are going to abandon their workstations and all that, because it does no good to them and even to the citizens of this nation who go to those public hospitals to seek for medical treatment. So in my considered view is that the doctors through their officials need to sit down with the people concerned, rather than coming to the social media or coming to media or coming to cameras and trying to tell us what the things they're telling us now.
Okay, and before we finish up on this, Nordin, I will come to you on this, and it's on the cartoon pages of the Daily Nation. Here's what's coming up. And there we go. It's CS Mutai Kagwe, who says health workers should get in and go back to work or I will fire them. But the vehicle by the Minister of Health seems to be heading no way, because it's tireless and might not be moving as wanted. Therefore, you can see how the state of the vehicle is. And in terms of explaining this, Nurdin, coming to you, it's more or less a jalopy vehicle, weather-beaten, and of course will not be making any motion. Is this the real state of affairs? And if the Minister of Health is in this state, then what will happen when the dust settles on the pandemic? What policy framework do you think will guide, especially in Kenyans accessing affordable and accessible healthcare service in the country?
I believe that is the state of the nation, not just the health sector, because our government is on a vehicle heading nowhere, because it is out of touch with reality, what people need. For example, right now, the health sector, people are crying out, and there is no solution to it. And the government really, it's more or less like it's bulldozing and doesn't care. It's either my way or the highway, and you can never live like that. You see, someone once said, my brother is saying the doctors need to tighten their belts and discuss. Someone once said, only a free person can negotiate. You see, the doctors can't negotiate with someone who doesn't want to talk. And if the only way that can make them listen is the way they are going, then so be it. Because you see, the same doctor has a family, has children, has a wife. So if, for example, they go and get in contact with someone with COVID-19 and you have no PPEs, once you die, what happens to your family? Those are the questions you need to ask. Because at the end of the day, they're human beings. So when someone tells you you just provide us with protective gears, why can't you do it? And that shows you the lack of leadership that we have. And that is the problem that has faced Kenyans ever since. And that is why our economy will never grow, because the government is out of touch. It's more or less it's on a guesswork mission where a magician that plays the clown wants to act in a circus. So that's the funny point. And we need to wake up as citizens, because we are the ones who elect these people. So we need to lay out and raise the integrity level and raise the competence level. So we don't just elect someone just because he gives you flour or a certain handouts or tokens. So we need to change that.
Okay. Justus, what's your thinking of that cartoon by the Daily Nation?
Like I said before, you see, there are things that happen behind the curtains that we are not told of. So I cannot authoritatively say that we are in that kind of state, but because you blame the government, and again you also blame these doctors, because Dr. Chibazi Machonda said that they will not obey court orders. That in itself is an illegality because they will want court to protect them at a certain point in time, and therefore they also need to obey and respect the court orders as and when the court orders are issued. So we are not in a state of a lawlessness whereby Kagwe can threaten doctors by sacking them.
Okay.
Neither can doctors also threaten not to go to work and not to obey court orders.
But they already have, down their tools.
Yes, they have down their tools, but now we are imploring them, that let them talk, let them have a sit down with the Ministry of Health, let them have a talk. Even as they talk, the officials would do the talking while the citizens are being attended to in the hospitals.
Okay. And of course, we look forward to perhaps a compromise from both ends of the party here in regards to who blink first, which appears to be again bringing in an aspect of egoism as the government and the doctors maintain hard positions on the matter. And now we cross over to the crisis in the county, and this is as highlighted by the Daily Nation this Tuesday morning. Benson Mutura's word on breaking the 37.5 billion budget deadlock, 8 billion for the county assembly of Nairobi, 2 billion for the county assembly rather, 8 billion for City Hall and 27.1 billion Kenya shillings for the Nairobi Metropolitan Services and its Director General Mohamed Badi. Senator Sakaja yesterday during the swearing-in ceremony of Benson Mutura as the acting governor for 60 days said or called on the governor to stick to the deed of transfer of the provisions as highlighted. That was when Governor Mike Sonko had transferred 4 key functions to the county, from the county to NMS. And this is part of course, as highlighted on the page, the picture, of course, of NMS boss Mohamed Badi and the county assembly speaker acting governor ahead of by-election here in the county of Nairobi. Now, Nurdin, do you think what's happening at the moment, and perhaps a case of the Siamese twin now in Mohamed Badi and Benson Mutura will unlock and perhaps address bread and butter infrastructure issues that have been affecting the people of Nairobi County?
As Nairobi citizens, or people who live in Nairobi, we hope that they actually work together. Because you see, the sideshows that we have seen, courtesy of the county government and the National Assembly, should not be experienced. Because where we see issue of fights, guns, and what have you, shows you the problem that stems from the top, which was from the governor. You see, what the governor, in as much as he's saying that his impeachment was unlawful and what have you, it was coming. The first time he was meant to be impeached, he ran to State House and handed over powers. So that time they didn't impeach him. But now the impeachment this time around came because of the 37.5 billion that he refused to sign. Now you see, it was more or less like he wanted either the NMS to fail so that he doesn't look like the failure, because in the little that NMS has done, people started questioning whether he has been doing anything.
Okay.
So now he was left in a state where he wanted power, but he had handed over some functions. And that is a challenge. Because you see, when you are your own advisor, you tend to strangle yourself with a rope because you don't know your next move. So you end up doing this and that without a proper plan. So I believe as Nairobi, we need proper services and we need proper leadership at the top, because you see, Nairobi is more or less the bread and butter of this country. Okay. So right now, if you have a clown for a governor, you end up suffering.
Okay, do you think the picture you saw yesterday, perhaps, that the coming together of General Badi and Benson Mutura is one that perhaps signifies or is a reflection of better working days ahead and for the people of Nairobi?
For the next 6 days, that is. Yep. Because if we are to go for a by-election, then we don't know who's going to come in. But the challenge with that as well is, you know, there's a court case where then Sonko nominated a DG. But now, the IBC still says Igade never resigned. So we have challenges going ahead, even in the by-election that is meant to come. Okay. So where we sit right now, Nairobi is in chaos. And we hope that the acting governor and the NMS will work together and in tandem, and also include the other elected members from Nairobi. Because you see, the MPs and MCAs and the senator were saying the governor was excluding them from helping to manage the county. So we need every single elected person on the same table so that they can be able to provide services for the county.
Okay, now coming to you, Justus, and in this case, looking at the deed of transfer, 4 key functions were transferred to NMS by Sonko: transport, finance, land and health. And when the governor objected in the signing of the documents that were to transfer funds from the county revenue fund to the NMS, do you think this was a way perhaps to clear the way for NMS to further roll out what they have started as part of the impressive record, according to the president, they heard, and the impact felt by the people of Nairobi?
You know, Sonko held this county at ransom. He took it as a personal property, whereby he was running it the way he wished and on his own whims. When he called on assistance by the national government, he had understood himself as a failure. He had understood that these functions are too heavy for him. He does not have managerial skills to run the county. So then he called for an assistance. So shock on him, because he also want personal gratification. When NMS started doing things the right way, it became a shock on him, because he wants people always to depend on him, that I'm the only person who can assist you by giving you foods and drinks, which are not even sustainable, you know. So he held this county at ransom. This 37.5 billion is a lot of money.
27, of course, to NMS, 8 billion to City Hall, 2 billion to the County Assembly.
This means that there are workers in this city that have not been paid. This means that there are services in this city that are currently at a standstill, yeah, because he has refused to sign this money to do these functions. So it's a good riddance that we are done with him, and it's a positive that this money has now been released. So, because you look at Nairobi, there is a change in Nairobi. You walk a few kilometers, you'll find an NMS vehicle, yeah, doing patrols and all that. At least they are closer to the people. They are there to be seen.
Okay, but
rather than Sonko, who moves with a certain crowd, gathers them somewhere, bribes them, and then that style of leadership is bogus.
But as you mentioned that, and perhaps give the NMS Director General Mohamed Badi and the entity a positive scorecard, what do you think might have blocked Sonko, or what do you think might have been the hurdle on his way? Is it because of the lack of capacity or incapacitation of that capacity by the governor himself?
No, it is lack of capacity from his own side, because he first did not put the right people in places, and perhaps also is because of the know-it-all attitude that he has. You know, is one guy who, like Miguna, they know everything. You know, so you cannot advise them, you cannot tell them. It is them or nobody else. You know, so it is failure on his own side. Had he structured his government properly, then he would have not failed. But he failed because, according to him, even when he was coming to office, he said Emil is the political head of Nairobi.
And Polycarp Igathe
will be the administrator of Nairobi. But then again, even as the administrator then, Polycarp Igathe was not given a leeway to exercise his duties, and that is why he moved out. Now, we cannot now even bring in the issue of whether Polycarp Igathe resigned or did not, because that has since been overtaken by events. We have now the acting governor, and we are going to an election in 60 days. So the question of Polycarp Igathe here does not suffice.
Okay. Now, Nurdin, coming to you, because it's very important that we also highlight this. And Badi, of course, is a military professional. And he having knowing the form of discipline and the hierarchy in the military, and now Benson Mutura, who seems to be cooperative and supported by the Jubilee Party, which has the majority in the county assembly. Do you think there will be perhaps an environment where they will be able to deliver on some of the key issues which are very basic that the people of Nairobi have been decrying about?
Well, if Benson Mutura maintains and does not rub the powers that be the wrong way. Because you see, when the other day the president was telling Sonko, generali ni wangu, weacha siasa, akimaliza kazi, atarudi barracks. And that day Sonko said that now okay, he'll go take out the court cases and what have you. But he continued wrestling the general. So you see, if Benson Mutura has no such motive to want to assert authority or act bigger than the general, they will work properly. Because the general clearly takes instructions from the president. He doesn't listen to anybody else. That is how, since he's in the army, so he'll only listen to the president. So if Mutura, in an acting capacity that he is, all they need to do is they need to work together. Because you see, any sideshows or high-headedness by any of them, the ones who are going to suffer are the people who live in Nairobi, because services will not be delivered, like what we have seen courtesy of Sonko. So we want both of them to work together. Mutura in the 60 days that they had, and whoever now is going to come, now that's another challenge we're going to face. Now, but in the meantime, the services that have not been delivered to date, that's what they need to work on. Now, by releasing funds to NMS had projects like the hospitals in every ward and what have you, that helps them in finishing every single objective that they have. So we hope the deadlines or timelines they had will go into service delivery, so that we avoid the circus that we have been seeing. Because you can even see the ones who impeached him, the MCAs, they're saying there's a sign of relief. Now, the Sonko and drama is gone. And that takes you to his impeachment, which was fun if you followed it, because it was more or less between him and the county assembly who stole more. Because they were saying you stole, and he was saying, okay, I stole, but you were also stealing.
So
that was his defense. If you could take it, he was more or less saying, okay, you stole bursaries, but you're now saying I stole every CD. So
you have painted generally a picture of a choked system in the county of Nairobi.
Yes.
Meaning the MCAs are also culpable.
Yes.
Do you think that they have played, and Justice will be responding to that, the oversight, legislation, and lawmaking process properly? And do you think if they have done it properly, then we'll be at this point of today discussing the crisis in the capital?
You see, the county assembly has not functioned since Sonko became governor. And that the worrying sign was the moment Igade resigned. That is when we as people of Nairobi should have realized there's a problem here. Because once your deputy says he's seeking resignation, there is a challenge. And once you see every 2 months a CEC is fired or resigns, that shows the lack of leadership from the top. Because when everyone else it becomes so hard for people to work with you, that means you're a problem. Because everyone can't have an issue with the same person and you believe you're the good person. So what we faced since 2017, where Nairobi has not had value for its money. The election that happened in 2017, we were more or less like still in a campaign period. Because you see, the governor, you are the governor, but you're still having as a rescue team doing services like giving water to people or giving flour so that people can have something to eat. You see, if systems worked properly, people would have tapped water in their houses. People would be able to make money and buy that packet of flour that you want to give. But since our leaders focus on impoverish them so that you use them, you see, they have this mentality where impoverish the citizens so that they depend on me for 200 shillings, 500 shillings. And that is the politics that we want to get rid of.
Okay. Now Justice, in responding to that, do you think the Legislative Assembly in this case at the county level, and in essence, the devolved system of governance had anticipated that because of the close proximity that these leaders have, the MCAs I'm talking about, to the people, they'll be able to hear their problems and craft laws that are in effect to that. In the context of Nairobi, do you think they have played that role?
Well, so far, so good as far as the impeachment of Mike Mbuvi Sonko is concerned. The MCAs played their cards well. Remember, some of them were with him in Kwale, but they voted to impeach him. So as far as that one is concerned, they looked at it and realized that, you know, we are far much behind. We are behind the schedule. This guy is just seated there. He's doing nothing. There's no service delivery that is currently issuing to the people of Nairobi. And as far as that is concerned, they did well. So, again, you know, there is legislation and then there is implementation. So Sonko, having been the head of Nairobi County, is the implementing authority of the legislations that have been passed by the County Assembly. So no matter how good those legislations have been passed, but there is no goodwill from the governor, to actualize the legislations, then it is like hitting the wall with bare hands, and it's an injury to yourself. So now let us see going forward what these guys are able to do.
Okay.
But again, what we saw from the impeachment is that there is blame game. That is why, and I don't know the kind of counsel that was with Sonko, because if we are impeaching you, for example, and you are also blaming me as if I'm the one being impeached, you know, it raised a lot of incompetence on the side of the councils that were representing the governor, because they were now apportioning blame on the majority leader, or sorry, the minority leader of the county for having also received some kickbacks and did not travel as it was meant to be. As a lawyer, that was really far below an LLB student.
Okay. Now, Nurdin, coming to you as we also finish up, and I will take your account as regards to the festive period, because we have a highlight from the Daily Nation. And Nairobi is to Kenya what London is to England, or Beijing is to China, or Rome is to Italy, or New York is to the United States of America. 21.7% in the 2017 financial year was the contribution made by the city in terms of the GDP. A policy brief by the United Nations Development Programme also talked about the importance of Nairobi. A 2011 study by the local think tank, the Institute of Economic Affairs, also talked about Nairobi as the hub and the biggest contributor in terms of the GDP. In the eyes of the international community, do you think what's happening is right? And do you think this might have informed not to dot our reputation globally as to the intervention and the creation of NMS to perhaps sanitize the problems by Kidero and Sonko?
Yes, I believe in bringing in NMS was a measure of the government trying to save face when it comes to Nairobi. You know, when you think about Kenya, the first thing that comes to your mind is Nairobi. So if, let's say you're an investor and you're coming to Nairobi, once you land at JKI, as you come from JKI, you see dirt, you see rubbish, you see all manners of unkemptness and no proper structures. You see, even you investing your money in such a country is hard, because if this is a capital city, I'll beg to ask, what about a remote county? Because you see, the face of the country matters a lot. It's like you're going to buy something, and then you see it has a fault, but still buy it. That means you either don't think straight or you have a problem. So you see, they had to save face by taking out Sonko, because Sonko was actually more. He was involved in his own drama. He was like in a drama festival where he's the creator, the originator, and then he's the one who plays every part. By not offering services and actually having the county at ransom was a challenge that the country was facing. That is why every other time you could see the president who was telling him, put politics aside, let us work. And now we are thankful that now that has happened. He can go and do whatever he's doing, which means now he's going to court. We don't know for what reasons, but now we need to focus in bringing back the lost glory. Because you have things like the Nairobi National Park, which bring tourism. You need to market such things, you know.
Okay.
And you need to make the ease of doing business better and actually appealable to anyone who wants to do business in Nairobi. So we need to have better structures and better leadership for us to actually be a hub, as you said, a better hub. Because you know you have cities like Pretoria who are going to compete with you, and now Tanzania is coming up. So you need to put your things in order, unless you want to become the laughing stock.
Okay, yes, Justice, your point.
Now, before maybe we just move from that point, I would like to invite Kenyans to Chapter 4, Article 75, Sub-Article 3, which clearly bars now people like Sonko from running for office. Yesterday, there was a live event that he covered while distributing foods and all that in a certain part of this city. And I happened to say that, yes, Bwana Mike, you are very good at charity.
Philanthropy.
Yes, but then you are not good at management. And you could fit if you would liaise with the Red Cross Kenya so that you could work with them. Because actually that is what the governor is good at. But on managerial skills is at zero. And I got blows and kicks because people of sanity agreed with me. And those ones of, I might call them of mean intelligence, really came gun blazing on me. Kenyans should know the law. The Kenyans should know that Mike Sonko is now barred from running any state office as per Article 75 of our 2010 Constitution, especially sub-Article 3.
Okay, and of course largely to Chapter 6 of the Constitution on integrity and leadership. Now we finish up on this, and on the front page of the Daily Nation, Charles, this is as highlighted this morning, a Christmas like no other. The pressure continues to pile up on Kenyans. The useful tips: you can still make merry if in these difficult financial times. Low budget with less money in their pocket and January school fees beckoning. Most Kenyans have settled for short Christmas or festive period. The picture highlighted on the front page of the Daily Nation this Tuesday morning is of the travelers who have been waiting for their buses to depart the Machakos Country Bus terminal here in the county of Nairobi. What's your thinking here, Nurdin? And coming to you in regards to since March, when we first recorded the first case of the pandemic, and of course the economic effects in the aftermath, and now January with schools that are set to reopen and vaccine that is set to perhaps touch down in the country in mid-January. Do you think this can all be, can all perhaps lead to a sane 2020, and how will Kenyans brace these difficult times?
In seeing that image, you realize one thing: the harsh economic times that people are facing. You see, when you see all those people lining up to go to upcountry, some of them are never coming back. Some of them, the city has become harsh. Either they don't have money for rent, they don't have money for food. And so they seek solace in going back home. They'd rather stay at home and try and come back later. Others might come back. But now you see, as the government says schools are opening on the 4th of January, there's a challenge because now school fees, there's uniforms and what have you. Now you see these children, when they go back to school, yes, we have to open up the economy, as they say. Have they thought about the issue of transportation? Some of them use public transport. Have they thought about the issue of how safe are the schools? The other day, I had a football tournament in one of the schools. And I can tell you for a fact that the schools are not prepared. Because you see the population of a school, how many sanitization places, areas will they have, for example? Have they talked about the masks? I saw the government was saying MPs to give out masks. The MPs that we know, will they hand over masks to children?
They said we have not received any money for the CDF in this financial year.
Exactly. So now it's more or less like you were saying, go back to school. It's a suicide mission, but go and try and survive, which is hard. Because if that is the future generation that you're building Vision 2034, if they die, what's the need for that vision? It doesn't make sense. So you see, our government needs to have better preparation mechanisms, and they need to bring stakeholders on board so that they can be able to plan ahead. Because as we are going right now, come 2021, we are seeing now there's a second phase. Now, the virus in UK has mutated. What tells us it won't come to Kenya? So we need to take care of, one, the children as they go to school. That's the first thing. Because if we lose that population, there's no need of having Kenya, because no one will take over the industrialization you're fighting so hard to get.
More or less, it deprives the country of the needed human resource and labor, which again, not only in the Kenyan context, but also in the world order as we move forward, is likely to determine how an empire will crop up, as is the case we're witnessing with China, which is now an economic miracle, and also in the United States of America. And just as, what do you think is the concern here the government has, especially when people travel to their rural homes, as we have seen highlighted on the front page of the Daily Nation? And in this case, are we likely to witness a local flare-up of the pandemic or cases of the virus? And do you think there is the capacity for a second wave of the pandemic, say in January 2021?
Ayub, allow me begin from the point that I do not personally celebrate Christmas because of its origin and its roots. It doesn't make sense to me. But where the birth of Christ is, where we have a lot of pregnancies and we have people drinking alcohol and going to the nightclubs and dancing, all that, when this is the birth supposedly for somebody who came to save people from sin. So it doesn't make sense to me. But I'll give credit to Kenyans on one thing, that Kenyans love freedom. Kenyans also are hardworking. Kenyans are very hardworking, so that even in these hard economic times, they're saying, let us travel, go back home, and at least go spend this season with members of their families. The pandemic is already in the villages. It's there. If you get, it's only that maybe some of these things we are not told, but the pandemic is there in the villages. How it got there, it's a story for another day. But the pandemic is there, and we do not have capacity to handle it if there is an upsurge. We cannot bar Kenyans from traveling up country because whether they are here or they are up country, the status of health is still the same. The doctors that are on strike in Nairobi are the same doctors on strike back at home. The government that has not released the PPEs to the doctors is the same government that is back at home.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is the same. It's one and the same thing.
Okay.
What it calls for is the personal responsibilities of Kenyans, knowing that if you get if you contract this pandemic or this disease, the COVID-19,
okay.
It disorientates the normal functioning of your body and even the economic status of the family. So Kenyans should just take care even as they celebrate, so that we do not have the upsurge of the pandemic.
Okay, yes, and I'll come to you on the final word. Nurdin, let me give you the closing remarks. And for the year, perhaps, as we embark for the holidays, and starting with you.
To my fellow Kenyans, as we were told by the government, the pandemic is with us, and you need to take care of yourself. As funny as that sounds, it's true, because they have left us to the wind. Now, as we close this year, we hope for a better 2021, and we hope that we as citizens, for example, in going forward in electing leaders, we hope that an election in Msambweni has served notice to the fellow Kenyans. So that you elect people, not because of you are told to do it, but because you believe that you will be in touch with the person that you've elected. We believe that going forward, we don't need clowns for leaders, but we need people of service delivery to act for us. So wake up and be wiser and fight for what is yours.
Okay, thank you. And just as your final comments.
Now, my final comments would just be to tell Kenyans to take care, because your health and your life is your own responsibility.
Okay, and of course that is the clarion call as the country continues to navigate the choppy coronavirus waters in the country. March was the month when the first case of the pandemic was recorded in the country. And 9 months later, the country is not off the hook yet, but it appears there is a progress, and the expected vaccine that is set to touch down in the country in mid-January next year by the grace of God. Thank you, Justice. Thank you, Nurdin. And thank you to you too for watching. We'll see you tomorrow morning for perhaps what may be the last show of New Day Kenya here on the broadcast. And we'll see you then. Bye-bye.